Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Her Power Podcast, a space created to empower, educate, and elevate young women in every role and season of life. I am Sydney Ward, Miss Best Volunteer 2026, and I am also the founder of the Rise and Reclaim Project, which is an initiative I started dedicated to helping young women build confidence, understand their worth, and recognize the power they already carry within. Each episode, we will be sitting down with a variety of female leaders, athletes, title holders, and change makers in our community to have real conversations about self-worth, confidence, and empowerment, and what that truly looks like in each of their unique roles. Because here, we believe that when women rise, they don't just grow, they reclaim who they were always meant to be. So let's get into today's episode. Kelli Russell brings a wealth of experience from multiple perspectives. As a competitive athlete, a mother and coach of two high-level athletes, and a dedicated judge and coach with over 50 years in the sport. She has judged at 2 WFMBTA World Championships, and her teams and individual athletes have earned numerous titles and awards at state, national, international, and world levels. Kelli's extensive background spans both WFMBTA and WBTF organizations, giving her a well-rounded understanding of what is required to support and advance the sport of baton twirling from every angle. She is honored to serve on the USA Baton Committee and is deeply committed to helping the sport continue to grow, providing the absolute best opportunities for athletes, parents, and coaches alike. Without further ado, please welcome our guest for today, Kelli Russell.
Hi there.
So for those of you who may not know, Kelli and I actually go way back. Kelli was my competitive baton twirling coach for 15 years, and so she actually has put up with me for that long, believe it or not.
It's a challenge.
All jokes aside, Kelli and I have built a really great relationship together over the last 15 years, and she really has taught me a lot, and I wouldn't be the woman I am today without her, so I'm very honored and happy to have you today on the podcast.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, so starting out, I just wanted to point out to everyone, just so that everybody else knows, Kelli is very modest. She herself was a competitive baton twirler who won several major titles, including the title of Miss New York, and she won the talent portion at Miss America. Just saying. If you haven't seen the video yet, go watch it on YouTube. It's very iconic.
In your opinion?
In my personal opinion. Anyways, Kelli, you have had such an incredible competitive career yourself. Tell me a little bit about what originally drew you to the sport of baton twirling, and at what time did you realize that it was going to become such a big part of your life?
The first time I was ever introduced to baton twirling, I was young. I'm 6 years younger than my sister, and she was studying dance at a dance studio that also taught baton twirling. And you know how when you're a younger sister, you tag along with your mom to drop your older sister off or pick her up. And I don't know if it was watch week or whatever. I was in there watching, and I told my mom I wanted to take the baton. Didn't have any interest in the dancing portion of it, but I wanted to take those baton lessons. And I don't remember this part, but my mom said I just kept bugging her. When can I start baton? When can I do it? So eventually she did start me in baton twirling. And my sister also twirled, but she was much more of a dancer than a baton twirler. That was definitely her area where she excelled. And I chose baton twirling. There's no actual pinpointed date when I said this is going to overtake my life and become everything to me. But I just remember that it's always seemed like the next logical step to do more. Oh, switch to a baton studio that specializes in baton rather than dance. Oh, I'm in a group. Let's go to competitions. And I'm very young at the time, five or years old or 6, whatever. And then, you can do solo events and not only have to compete in a group. Okay, sign me up for those. And it never was a question. It was always, I want to do that. Well, let's go here. And, my mother would say, should we travel to another state for a contest? Yes, let's do that. It was always, I wanted more. So it seems like it was always a given that it was going to be a major part of my life. And I was kidding. I try not to let it take over my entire life, but it is my job. And people talk about their job all the time. So do I.
Yeah, I feel like that's a common path for twirlers. Every twirler starts at a really recreational level, and then it just seems like it progressively everybody manages to become a coach or a judge or stays involved in the sport somehow.
Yes, and many times it's because their parents twirled, and I didn't have that. My mom had no idea what she was getting herself into. She's glad she did, though, and I'm glad she could sew all my costumes and save a little bit of money that way. And I think she really enjoyed traveling. She sort of had her own posse of moms at the competitions who would hang out together. And when I was in the Miss America pageant, they all came to Atlantic City to watch me and be there with my mom. And I know they had a ton of fun. Some of them still talk about it to this day.
So, after your career, what inspired you to move into the coaching and the mentoring step and think about the next generation of athletes?
It actually wasn't after my career. I started coaching before I actually retired. I started teaching at the YMCA, and I know I'm old, but you'll be impressed with the amount of money I made. They said I could use the gymnasium at the Y, and they asked if I would teach a course, and I would get 25 cents per student, which I suppose, well, it was a lot more money then, but it still wasn't very much money, let's face it. So it was a little frustrating for me. I was about 15 years old, and I felt like it was more of a babysitting service. A quarter, let's drop the two girls off at the Y. She can learn baton. They can learn baton for an hour, and it cost me 50 cents for both my daughters. But I kept it up, and I found that I really did enjoy it. The kids were fun, and I liked it. So then, as I was still competing, there would be younger kids. You know how they look up to the older athletes and they wanted to take lessons. And so I started teaching while I was still competing. And the year I won College Miss Majorette of America, my student won the Juvenile Miss Majorette of America. So that was, I think that's impressive. I didn't think it was impressive at the time. It just seemed normal to me. But looking back, it's hard to be a serious full-time, not full-time, but put all of your effort into these athletes while you're still competing. But after I won that title, I did retire. So then my number of students grew, and I really felt I was making a difference in their lives. I wasn't changing the world. I wasn't just trying to get them to be baton champions. I thought it was important as a coach to instill in them that it's more important to be a good person rather than to be a champion. I did like when they won, though, too. Not that I didn't encourage that, but that was my main job.
I was going to say, isn't that interesting? You went from teaching at the Y for 25 cents to now coaching athletes all over the world and all over the country.
Right. Just the other day, I did a virtual video lesson with someone from Australia. And I always wanted to go to Australia.
So you have coached so many athletes to national and world titles. What would you say the core philosophy behind your coaching is?
Well, there isn't one core. There are a lot of things I try to achieve with them. Most times it's different for each person. Everyone's unique, and you tailor what you're doing with them and how you're working with them. But I think my main philosophy is to be a well-rounded person. And you would think that an excellent coach's philosophy would be the best that you can be. Well, that's true too, but if you're not a well-rounded person, then you're only talking about being the best you can be in baton. That's too one-sided. It's a big world out there. There's a wonderful life while you're competing, not just after you retire. And sometimes I look at serious athletes, especially with the Olympics just having happened, I wonder how many of them did have a life. They have to give up so much to train for that. And I admire that. I encourage my students to train as much as they need to train to be the best that they can be. But also, I'm not the coach that will say, no cheerleading, that's dangerous. No, you can't go in the pool the night before a competition, something could happen. There are coaches that do that. Or no, you can't go on the track team or be on the basketball team. Although my students who have been on the basketball team have jammed fingers, almost all of them who've ever played, but I didn't want to stop them from doing that. And I have one student, I'm sure I have more, but I have one example where I encouraged this student to take ballet lessons to help herself with Baton. She was already a beautiful strutter, and I thought with training that she would really flourish. And she fell in love with ballet. And then after a couple years, she said, well, can I just strut? I don't want to twirl anymore. I said, no, Emily, this is baton twirling. That is the sport. I think it's time for you to choose ballet. I said, I'm not going to tell you what to choose, but I can tell that's become your first love. And she went on and majored in dance in college, and she became a ballroom dancer and has won worldwide awards, definitely because of that ballet training.
Yeah, you're
That
welcome.
right, right, that she had, and quite successful in numerous areas. But that's okay because it wasn't meant for her to be. She was a very nice twirler too, but if you don't have that love in your heart and that desire, it's very difficult to pull it out of someone and encourage them to be a champion. I still do it when I have to, but I love it when you can see the love radiate from within them. And sometimes it grows. They start out being wishy-washy, like, yeah, this is fun. I like to travel. And then all of a sudden, they're the most focused athlete I have who's training more than anyone else and becomes a success. So that's always fun too. But like as I said, and I'll reiterate, it is a unique path for each and every person. Of all the students I've taught in my life, and at my age, there's been so many of them, they've all been different. I can't say that one closely mirrored another.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to switch a little bit into talking about building confidence in especially your athletes.
Mhm.
So, a lot of athletes struggle with confidence, especially in a judged sport like baton twirling. So,
Right.
how do you help your athletes build confidence in themselves, both on and off the floor?
Well, that's not a quick answer. Once again, that's unique to each person. And I think it's in preparation before the competition, meaning prepare them for what a judge sport is all about. You can get comments from judges, and some judges word them very diplomatically, but some judges unknowingly write something down that can hurt an athlete's confidence. So I think it's very important, A, for the judges to be aware of this and word their comments accordingly, but it's also good for the athlete to know that. And sometimes I'll tell them many different things, but one of the ways I do it is to say, it's like an actor going for a part. You might be the greatest actor in the world, but if you're not suitable for that part, you're not going to get it. Even if you are the greatest actor in the world, you might not make sense if you're playing a couple with the other person who's been cast. And it's the same thing in baton. I also want them to know that every contest they attend is a learning experience for them. It's not all about winning. And I think one area, besides the comments from judges, or scores, even just scores from judges, that can be deflating. When I say to them, that judge is a low scorer, that's a good score from them, and it's your job to take what they're saying, improve, get better. Let's see what happens at the next contest and the one after that. Let's look at the season as a whole year long, or 9 or 10 months long. Let's not just look from contest to contest, because scores can fluctuate and things like that. So I also want them to know that drops are not the be all and end all. It seems like it. I mean, our job is to catch a baton, right? But we also know that's not what happens all the time. And I do tell my students, especially when they're newer or they're feeling down, when I judge a competition, I ask them about how many all catches, no drops, that I see in a day. And you know what that number is? It's about 1 or 2. Unless it's a big contest, such as a state championship where everybody's at their peak and they're really working hard, you sometimes don't get a no drop in front of you. So I said, judges are used to it. Everybody out there is dropping too. And the other thing I do is, once I've addressed that issue, I try to never talk about drops again. I only talk about catching. How many times have you heard me say, watch the middle into your hand? And I'm at a contest and I'll hear other coaches say to their athletes, okay, be careful on this trick. Don't drop it. Ooh, okay, that already is,
Now
it's
I'm thinking
making
about
me,
dropping it.
yeah, I'm nervous for the other athlete, and I don't even have to go out there and do it. But that's just my way. Now, granted, there are times when there are students who drop too much and they're working too hard, and there should be less drops from the work that they're putting in. So I'll talk to them about that, and I'll say, what are they doing? Are they just practicing the trick 10 times and dropping it 10 times? Well, then they're really, really good at dropping it if that's what they're doing every day. So we'll talk about ways to correct the technique and fix it, and focus only on not only catching, but all kinds of positive thoughts. Look at the overall picture. 100 points in an NBTA score sheet, and only a half a point off for a drop. It's not a killer. It's not a placement killer. It's not always the decisive factor. So I could go on and on with this answer, but I think preparation before competing and treating your student with a positive attitude all the time, which means only giving positive corrections, not don't cross over. That's just putting crossover in their mind. Pull up, releve, turn out, and tap in front. I write those on my board. I'm sure you've seen them on the board in my twirling room before. So it's a positive attitude that radiates from the coach and will flow through the student. And when they come off the floor, the first thing I always say to them is a positive comment. Now, Sydney, you can well imagine there have been times that there was nothing positive to say. That happens every once in a while. I have had to say, wow, that was really great. You were on time. I know that seems like a lowly comment, but usually, they've been overtime in practice or whatever. But I always find something that was really, we worked on your turnout and foot placement, and that was great in that routine. There's always something to find. It's
Yeah.
rare when there's nothing.
That was always something I really appreciated about your coaching style as an athlete is a lot of people would ask me all the time, like, is Kelli like hard on you in the gym? Like, does Kelli yell or anything like that? I'm like, no. Like, I could have some horrendous solo and come off the floor, and it's still going to be something positive and something good. So I never felt that pressure from you as a coach to do well
Well,
or be perfect, because it's not possible that you can
no,
never control
it's
everything
not.
that's going to happen.
I mean, I've seen perfect routines before, perfect performances, but they are so rare
Yeah.
and so far between in all my years of coaching, but I've seen a couple from you over the years too. And, then there are those days when it's not your day. And if you, you have to live with it. And I think that's part of the life lessons that Baton Twirling teaches you. Life isn't perfect. You don't run through, flower fields with butterflies floating by all the time. There's going to be some bad stuff happening in your life. And if you learn how to handle that and move forward in Baton, you set yourself up for a happier life. Because when those things happen to you that are not good, you can overcome them. And that's very important too. I mean, I have had students' parents say, "Do you ever yell? Do you ever get excited?" But I feel like just remaining one note is very important. I don't want to go crazy over a good job because then they want to always do good jobs. Oh, Kelli will be really happy over this. They shouldn't perform to make me happy. They have to perform for themselves. And I think the best example of that, speaking of the most recent Olympics, is Alyssa Liu. She performed for herself. It was what she wanted to do, how she wanted to do it, with other people's help, of course. And it made her happy. She wasn't performing for her coaches. She was performing for her. And that's imperative.
So, from your experience, you've coached athletes at the highest levels. And how much do you think success comes from talent, and how much of it do you think comes from mindset? And kind of a follow up to that, what qualities do you often see in athletes that eventually become champions?
That is definitely unique to each person. The one thing I learned at a very young age when a student transferred to me from another coach, and her coach, I knew her coach, and I talked to the coach that this was happening, and she said, "No, I'm glad it's happening. She's never going to make it. She doesn't have what it takes." She said it maybe a little more diplomatically than that, but that was the basis of it. So what did I do? I went into teaching her thinking, "Ooh, she must not be very good." And she wasn't great, but she turned out to be a state champion and placing in her events on the national level, and was really a rather amazing twirler. And if I didn't put the negativity out of my mind and try to work on the negativity that was maybe built into her brain a little bit, I don't think she ever would have gotten there. But treat every student that they have limitless potential. Do they all have limitless potential? No, but we don't know that. I can't predict that ahead of time until we actually get into it. And some people struggle for 3 years, and you think, why are they still twirling? It's not happening. Is it ever going to happen? I never voice this to them, but I have those doubts inside my head. And then all of a sudden, 1 year, it clicks. Everything works and everything's right and moving along exactly how it should. That's the amazing part. So always treat everyone as if they have limitless potential and find a way to reach them. We're all different types of learners, and you have to know what teaching style reaches them and what motivation reaches them. Because I'd say in a coach's job, motivation may be the hardest thing. And we went through this in the pandemic, and I was racking my brain with things to do to try to motivate my students. Some of my students really just started to hate all the things I was suggesting to do, but you weren't one of them. You did them all. You might have thought to yourself, this is stupid, but I'm doing it. And it made a difference. You came out of the pandemic stronger than you went in. And not everyone can say that, but you put the time in. on that little back porch with your grill there, the barbecue grill.
I think I broke that barbecue.
That had to have a lot of dents in it. I mean, and I remember I'd bring in guest judges to judge the whatever the competition was for that week. And my daughter was judging one, Bailey, and she's like, Mom, Sydney won by a mile. Do you know what she did? She did a spin triple catch blind. I said, where did she do that? I don't know. It looked like the back porch of her house or something. This is the smallest area I've ever seen. Normal people, average thinkers would think, I can't do more than an illusion back there. You're zipping off these trucks. I said, can you send me the video? I wanted to see that. Well, I think determination is one of them. A love of the sport is another. And those really need to go hand in hand. When someone's really determined, but they're doing it for their mother or parent or whatever reason, it's not quite as good. It can still be great, but it's not quite as good if it doesn't go hand in hand with love of the sport. And then an ability to lift themselves up when things are going down or wrong or whatever, however you want to describe it. Because yes, I'll be there to help them, but not all athletes have strong support systems at home. Some have negative parents, some have absentee parents who drop them off and don't know what they're doing, which I do try to get them involved. But let's face it, in this day and age, sometimes they have high-powered careers that they just don't have time to go sit in a gym for a couple hours every night. So the self-motivation, the determination, the love of the sport, there are others, but those three really help. It also helps, but it's not mandatory, to be physically, naturally gifted with coordination. It's really a struggle for kids who are not as coordinated as others. They not only struggle to learn a trick, they struggle to do the body movements and coordinate them together. And it just makes it harder in general. But that's not a prerequisite because you can learn that. I would say those other three I mentioned were the main ones that I've noticed over my years together.
Talk a little bit more about you from a judging perspective and as a judge.
Mhm.
So, you have had the opportunity to judge at the highest level several international competitions and world championships. So, from the judge's perspective, what separates a good performance from an outstanding one on the floor?
Well, I hate to use the same example again, but I'm going to because it's something most people saw was Alyssa's performance for the gold medal in Italy. When she finished, you just knew that was it. We have to stand up, the people in the auditorium. My sister's texting me, who she hadn't been watching the Olympics, saying, did you watch the women's free skate? Did you see Alyssa? And I was coaching. I said, don't tell me, I have it taping. And everybody was talking about it. It lit up the arena. That is very hard to do. Not many people can do it. And she did it under the brightest lights, under what would normally be the most pressure, although she didn't put that pressure on herself, which makes a difference. It's a performance like that. But to put words to it and adjectives and descriptions, it looks like they want to be there. They're performing it for either you, the judge, or the audience. They have a mastery of the tricks that they're doing. They don't need to be the hardest tricks at the competition or in the world, but if they have them mastered, it is such a pleasure to watch. If they look joyful, it actually translates to the judge. Because in our sport, judging can sometimes be from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night. So that's not the best way to judge. You certainly are not getting the I don't want to overstep my bounds here, but the majority of judges are not giving their best thoughts and opinions after they've been there more than 12, really more than 4 hours, no less, more than 12 hours. So it's hard to judge. And when you can feel like you're being performed to, I know that's very bad grammar, but you know what I mean. And they're doing it for you and they're doing it well, that just all adds up to a fantastic performance. They could be joyful and happy, and if they don't have mastery of the tricks they're showing you, then that's painful to watch as well. So you have to have sort of a complete package there. And it's important to know what the judge expects when the coach goes through and choreographs a routine so it has everything that the judge is looking for and can give points for. That is wonderful too, because it makes your judging easier. You don't have to think, oh, she didn't do a horizontal section, or where were her half of her rolls? She only did elbows and nothing else. So that makes it easier too.
So, thinking about athletes who might be starting competing or might be nervous for competing for a judge for the very first time, you have the privilege of seeing it from both a coach's perspective and a judge's perspective. What is something you think competitors think judges are looking at or judging them for, but it's not really as important as they really think it is?
Well, okay. Over the years, I think athletes think very strong opinions about each judge. That judge hates me. No, they don't. There is no judge that hates an athlete ever. It just doesn't happen. They might not place you well consistently, but there's usually reasons. And even if they're winning with other judges, this judge might be a better judge and be looking at a higher level technique that should be included in the routine. It's important to give each judge the opportunity to help them. It's not a judge's judge to coach them, but it is a judge's job to let them know where the areas are that need work, need improvement, or need to add more within it. But I think that's the answer to the question. They think the judge is judging them. No, they're not. The judge is judging the routine, the performance, the execution of the routine. They don't judge you as a person. And I think that's important to know that. And I try to instill that in my students as well. They have no feeling about you personally. They don't know you. They're only commenting on what you did in front of them. And when you see a circle or work here or needs improvement written on the score sheet, that's helpfulness. That is critiquing to let you know where a weaker spot is that you have and you can improve it. They're helping you for the next time they judge you or anyone else. And I think that's very important to remember. Not judging you.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because as an athlete, sometimes you give the judge a little bit too much credit in the fact that they are just people at the end of the day. They're humans just like you and I. They're not sitting there judging everything and they're not as intimidating as they seem behind the table.
Exactly. And judges make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I drive home from a competition after judging and think, was that right? I have to pull out my master sheet. I have to check those scores again. And my older daughter, Chelsea, tells me that's because you're a good judge, because you worry about it. Instead of just driving home, oh, well, whatever I did, and I shouldn't worry about it because I'm serious about it when I do it. If I feel fatigue coming on, I'll stand up and leave the table or ask for a caffeinated beverage of some sort, which you don't want me hopping around on the table, but a little bit to wake me up would be good. It's a serious job. People pay a lot of money to enter those competitions and they deserve your attention. But it's hard. Think about sitting in college classes all day. You don't sit in 8 hours of classes in a row with maybe a half hour break and know every single second of what was presented to you. But that's what a judge is expected to do.
True.
We have to pay attention every single second. If you blink or look away, you might miss their best trick. You might miss something,
Yeah.
and you shouldn't miss anything.
So, my platform focuses a lot on empowerment and helping young women recognize their own worth. And
Mhm.
so, as a coach, how do you intentionally build those qualities in your students?
I think it's important to build them even from a young age. When they are starting young, and most of them do, they're being told what to do. You have to get up for school, eat breakfast. You have to go to school. You have to sit in your chair. You have to listen to the teacher. You have to follow the rules. You have to stand up. You have to hold your friend's hand when you're in kindergarten and, walk to the lunchroom. It's just a whole day of being told what to do. Then they come to a baton lesson and they're being told what to do. And I try to make it the opposite of that. And I encourage parents to watch, especially the one who's going to be with them, watching them practice during the week, and they'll get upset. You can do that. You've done it for me before. Do it again. And that's a really tough position for the athlete to be in as a youngster. They want to do it right for me. They're not trying to do it wrong. If they could just flip a switch and it was perfect, that's what they would do. So I always try to calm that situation down and talk to the parent afterwards and say, it's okay. They're not going to be perfect every time. If they were perfect every time, who would practice?
Yeah.
They were perfect. Why bother practicing? So I like to give them a little bit of autonomy over their lesson. Now, at first, it's hard. If I say, what would you like to go first? They don't know. I don't know. What are the events? What are the choices? But once they get to a point where, would you like to practice your marching first or do your solo first? A lot of times they'll stand there and stare at me. I don't know. I don't know. You pick. Well, that's the whole point. I'm asking them to pick. And that's just a small way to get it started. Okay. Um, a lot of times this is sort of cheating, I think, as a coach, but I'll say, do you want to learn a new trick? Everybody says yes. Yes. They don't even know what the trick is. Yes, we want to learn a new trick. But it makes them feel like they got to choose to learn this new trick. I said, and if you practice it and get it down, we'll put it in your solo. So that can be a risky promise too. You never know. And then as they get older, I'll tell them to formulate their own practice sessions. So when they're going to the gym, whether their mom is driving and they're not old enough to drive yet, or when they are old enough to drive, figure out what they're going to do. You don't want to go to the gym every day and do 5 solos, 3 struts, but 4 two batons, whatever, in a row, 6 rhythmic twirls, whatever it is. It's boring. So figure out what you would focus on. And I tell them, pick out one thing to improve every day. Because what does a parent want to do? A parent coach? Let's fix your free hand, get up on your toes, increase your speed, add the difficulty, and 6 other things today. Okay, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So pick one thing. And you go at least 4 times a week, some people more, but mostly it's around 4. Fix the speed today, work on the speed, do the drills, repeat 5 in a row and time every section, see what happens. And then the next day, they can work on working higher on their toes or turnout or whatever. And then the next day, check the speed again, go back to it. But decide maybe one day they're going to do one strut because they're exhausted, or just a couple legs of strut. Skip it that day. It's not going to hurt. It'll give you a breather. Most sports, you have to have muscle recovery time. And I don't think twirlers as athletes are very good at that. I think once the season hits, it's go, 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 go. And too bad for recovering. We got to keep going. Nationals are coming. I qualified for worlds. Worlds are coming. So,
Yeah. I can definitely say that that was something I appreciated, especially as I got older, is that it was a relationship. We were a partnership. It wasn't so much as like you just telling me what to do every lesson. It really was like we were working together to get
mhm.
stuff done, and that was really successful ultimately.
Yes, and as they do get older, I encourage them to very much help with the choreography. Not all of them are good at it. I wouldn't send them off on their own to, fix their solo or choreograph a collegiate routine or something like that. But asking their opinion, what does that feel like? Look in the mirror. Oh, let me take a video of both choices. I'm going to show them to you. And you know what, Sydney? Invariably, we choose the same one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the second one was way better than the first one because you can tell, you can feel it, and then you can see it when it feels good. And when they're a part of it, oh, they like it so much more. So do I. I don't like always deciding. I don't know what they're thinking. And when they get old enough, they'll say, "I think if that's in my solo when I'm on the floor, I'm going to be so nervous I'll cheat it." Okay, we're not using that trick. And I always stress there are an infinite amount of tricks in the world. Infinite. So if one doesn't work, toss it. We'll come up with a better one. So, like a bun roll
Yep.
or something something along those lines.
I was gonna say when you brought up, do you want to learn a new trick? Sometimes I was like, do I? Because I don't know. I think you're making it up.
It might be too hard. No.
Yeah.
No new tricks for me. I'll
Yeah.
just keep
I'm
the same
good.
old stuff I've had for the last 2 years. But it really does help. It makes them feel like they don't always get to feel in school with, "Here's your homework. You have to do this." You don't always get a lot of choices. And then you go to college and you do get choices. And I think that's even harder for those kids who were rule followers.
True.
So, once again, another life lesson, let's play it by ear. Let's be more flexible. Let's do what works for you. And those athletes usually do better in college.
So, not to be negative, but we did talk a little bit about it earlier in that the fact that not every competition goes the way an athlete envisions. And I've definitely experienced that myself. Sometimes, no matter how exactly you pictured it in your head, it just doesn't happen the way that you hoped, whether it be the result or the performance itself. And so,
Right.
can you share an experience as a coach where one of your athletes had a performance at a big competition that maybe didn't go the way they had planned and they really struggled with that disappointment and felt unworthy, and kind of how did you go about that to lift them back up?
Oh, over the years, I've had that happen. The one that keeps coming to mind, I don't think she felt unworthy, but I didn't know what she was trying to cover up. I didn't know exactly what was underneath the superficial look. But it was a qualifying year for Worlds, and it was my daughter Chelsea who put more pressure on herself than anyone could ever imagine. I tried to never put any pressure on her. She didn't need that. She did it all herself. And she had broken her foot at the last before the last world qualifier and couldn't even go. So she decided she was going to pare it down a little bit and try for a few events. And if there was ever one sure bet, which there isn't in Baton, but if there was ever one sure thing for Chelsea, it was two Baton. And she won her open two baton. She was in the twirl off. I mean, it was generally expected that she would be in the top three, if not winning that twirl off. And she went on and had 6 drops and just started dropping from the beginning. And after the first one, I thought, oh, she never drops that. And then the second one, I'm thinking, what is happening? Okay, calm down. You'll get it back together. But she never did. And halfway during the routine, I almost quit thinking about what she was doing because I was planning what I was going to say to her when she came off. I felt like that was way more important for me to remember
Yeah.
if she ever got better or just didn't all the way through. And when she came, she came off, I didn't know if she was going to run off and cry. She walked over to me and she just said, it wasn't my day, or it wasn't my time. It wasn't meant to be, I think is what she said. And I said, Chelsea, that still happens. But what I'm so proud of is that was not a job that you normally do. It's not something you've ever really had to handle much in all your years of competition, and you held it together the entire time. She might have dropped it a lot, but she still looked good. She still looked good. And it's hard to tell her that. Still looked good, but you're not going to win. You're not going to be going to worlds with it with that job. So she knew that. I didn't need to tell her. And we stood there and talked about it, and she said, I don't know why it happened. It's never happened before, but it wasn't meant to be. And I remember when she walked away, another coach came up to me and said, wow, that should have been videoed as how to act when your student doesn't do what they're supposed to do. And it wasn't just me. He wasn't just complimenting me. It was how Chelsea handled it as well, because it had to hurt. It had to hurt so much. And the funny thing about it is that was the first year of Grand Prix. I think this was before your time. It was held in Vancouver. And there was an adult division. And she got the call to represent in the adult division. So I think she placed ninth. And I think 8 of the people ahead of her were all in just the senior division or something. I don't know if she qualified first or second, but she's like, I'm not going. I don't deserve it. I said, well, obviously you do deserve it, or you wouldn't have been offered the position. And she did go. My team was invited too. It was the highest we ever placed in team. We went in third place. The 2 Japanese teams were first and second. I said, look around, Chelsea. This is your dream. Did you ever believe we would be out here? And we're the 3 teams in the warm-up area going on for the finals. And she didn't win the gold, although I think it was close. 3 Americans were gold, silver, bronze, which is very unusual because the Japanese were in that event. And probably one of a really great, a typically great Baton. And I think she just felt so good about herself. And I remember saying, so do you remember how you felt after nationals and doing that job and where you are now? And she had retired a number of times, but that was her real retirement. She never came back to compete after that. So it does go to show you, you never know what's going to happen. A bad job could be not the best thing that's ever happened to you. I'm not going to be sappy and say that, but there are so many things to learn from it, that you can recover, that you'll come back, that you might come back better than you ever thought you could. All of those things happened. And that might be why I remember that instance so well.
I'm a firm believer in the everything happens for a reason, and so
Right.
sometimes it's just not. It might not have been your time to go to Worlds or have that opportunity yet, and so you needed more
Right.
time to train or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. And even with you, the year before you ended up winning the College Miss Majorette of America, you were very disappointed that year. I think you might have been disappointed in your performances. I'm not sure. They weren't the best you've ever done, but they were not bad by any stretch of the imagination. But the placement just wasn't there. But to me, it was a heartache for you. But to me, that set you up to win the next year. I remember saying to you, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is the plan. And the plan worked to perfection, really. So, but sometimes you need that. Everyone needs it. And you need it in life too, to realize life can be fragile. So take care of it as you go along.
So I had the privilege of being coached by you for 15 years, and you played such a big role in my athletic and my personal career. From your perspective as the coach, what is it like watching athletes grow from young kids or young students when you start with them to them becoming the confident young women that they all end up being normally?
Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. It's better than watching them win national, world, international awards. It really is. Although I wouldn't be much of a coach if my students didn't win those things. But the comparison, there is no comparison. I love it when they win. I love it. And I love it when they win because they wanted to win. It's not because I wanted them to win. It's my job is to listen to your goals and help you reach them. But to watch them, because they all they become a little bit like a daughter to me. They do. Um, and you get intertwined with them, especially when those students have gone to an international or world championship. You stand there with them under the most pressure they're ever probably going to feel at a baton contest, and you wait. You have to go through passport control and stand in this area for 5 minutes and stand in this area, and there's no twirling allowed, and you're just standing there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be ready. And you I try to say what needs to be said, and really in that instance everyone is totally different,
Yes.
and it's different with all of them, but you go through that and there is an unbreakable bond. Then it's totally different. And it's not that I don't love my students as much who've never gone through something like that, but it's different. You're in a foreign country. Everything is different for you in huge ways, and time change and grouchiness and food and everything. It's just so anyway, I'm belaboring that point when really what I'm supposed to be answering. And then I always think of two things. Number one, twirling helped them get there. The lessons they learned in twirling, not the winning. The winning doesn't always help you get there. It might build your confidence a little bit if you've won, but we all know we lose as much as we win. It's like even Steven, it balances out after a while. But the life lessons that you learned actually applied to your life. And you are working hard in grad school now. And I mentioned Morgan before, becoming a nurse and going on to get her doctorate. Those are hard to do. Those are hard things to do. And, I've had students go on to be lawyers and doctors and school teachers. And one of my students was the first female head of a naval base in the world. She was in Japan. Those things are amazing. Now, would she have done it without baton? Well, we'll never know, because she did it with baton twirling, helping shape her. And a lot of them keep in contact me and say, I'm so lucky to have had you and baton twirling, because baton really helped me focus my life and learn how to be organized and time management and all of those qualities that you need to be a success. So that's the greatest thing. And then the other thing is to see the determination that they had. That might have been intrinsic in them. They might have been born with it, but they not only applied it to their baton, they applied it to their real life. And it's very, very satisfying. And they'll say, oh, I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, they could. I was glad to be there, but they had it in them to do it. I was just blessed to be the one to help guide them along that pathway.
Yeah, I always say it's funny that you think about something like baton twirling or even pageantry. I say this too, is you don't think when you start it, it's really going to teach you much other than twirling literally or literally
Right.
doing pageants, but there's so many things you can take away from it that I use every day in my life that came from twirling and from lessons like that. So
Oh, absolutely. And my two daughters, I don't mean to brag about them, but they are perfect examples It's very hard to get a teaching position in the area where we live. And Chelsea was able to get one quite swiftly, certainly comparatively. I know people who have been uh, substituting for 5 years and still didn't have a position. But she taught in Switzerland. She taught in, I don't remember all the places she went, Croatia. I mean, she traveled to all those countries. You look at her resume, and of course, you would want to hire someone with those things on their resume, and it gave her an advantage. And it did make her a better teacher. I think she's a great teacher. Obviously, her schooling at the University of Iowa helped to make her the great teacher as well, but she knew to put more into it and utilize the different forms of learning and how to teach them better, and that made her a great teacher. And it's the same thing with Bailey. She did pageants, loved them, did not want to retire from entering pageants, but she had an internship, which only 80 people in the country were selected for before her junior year. Or was it after her junior year? I think. Whatever. Both of them, she went to two different cities, and both of them offered her a job. She had a job lined up before she even started her senior year. And she couldn't compete in pageants with doing that internship. She knew that was more important.
Yeah.
But she just did a presentation the other day and was nervous about it. And she said her training from pageants really helped her. And, it's not everybody presents well, she said, in that type of speaking in front of the entire company, and even in interviewing skills to get her job makes a difference.
As a seasoned coach and a mentor, what advice would you give to young girls or even young athletes right now listening who are still trying to find the confidence and learning to believe in themselves?
I think I would repeat what I've already said and say, maintain the positivity. Look for the positivity. Sometimes you can't maintain it if you don't have it. So, first of all, look for it. What are you gaining from this activity? And make it all about you. We try not to be narcissistic and only think of ourselves, but in this aspect, you want to think, what do I want to get out of this? And how can I get that out of it? Talk to your coach, be honest. Talk to your parents, be honest. Talk to teachers at school and ask them for advice and what they should be working towards, what type of goals or qualities should they be striving to work towards to obtain by competing and participating in a sport. I think that's the most important thing, is always look for the positive. And I have one other that sounds so simplistic. Take videos. Video yourself. Video a routine at a contest, video a section at a lesson, and save them. And go back in a year and look at it and think, you won't think you're any better. And then you watch that and think, oh my gosh, is that all I did? I can do twice that now, especially if you go back and look a couple years later. And I think that's very helpful. I've never had it happen so far, knock on wood, that they go back and think, oh, I was better then than I am now. It just usually doesn't happen. So I remember, this is just an aside, Chelsea loves to watch videos, and my husband, he takes a lot of them. He looked back at a video when she was about 5 years old and said, "What was that?" I said, "That's an illusion." "Oh, that's not an illusion." "Yes, it is. That's how you learn illusions." "Well, that's awful. Why did you let me do that?" It was just so funny. That had to build her confidence.
No, I can do it. So for my last question, Rise and Reclaim My Platform is built on 3 words: educate, elevate, and empower. Which of those 3 words resonates most with you in this season of life, and why?
Educate, elevate, and empower. Well, really, what good is one without the others? When you think
Very
about it,
true.
I mean, you can elevate someone by some fast talking, slick talking words, but if they don't have the education to go with it, it won't do any good. You really need to know what you're doing and then lift them up to be the best they can be, and then give them the empowerment to take over the world with it. So they're in the right order too.
Yeah.
Seriously. But I can't pick one.
That's fair.
They're all important,
Mm-hmm.
but each one depends on the other one to be a success.
Mm-hmm. I like that answer. That's my favorite one.
Ooh. Out of all this time, that was
All
your
these people, these two people I've videoed. So, Kelli, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Truly means a lot to me to have you on, not only because of everything you've accomplished in the twirling world, but also the impact that you've had on so many young women and athletes, including myself. I'm grateful that you took the time today to share your perspective on coaching, judging, and empowering young women. Your influence goes far beyond the titles and medals, and I know that athletes past, present, and future have benefited from your guidance. Thank you again for being here and everything that you've done for our sport and our athletes.
Thank you so much, and continued success to you, Sydney.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Her Power Podcast. Remember, your worth and your power are never defined by titles, medals, or anyone else's expectations. They already live within. Keep rising, keep reclaiming your power, and we'll see you next time on Her Power.